Chapter 25, which is about money and what that means for the economy. So money influences price level, and therefore it influences inflation as well. Inflation being change in price level over time, a positive change. We saw that, in fact, there's a lot of things we're going to cover in this chapter. We're going to begin by defining money and describing its functions. We're going to explain the functions of banks and other institutions, talk about the Reserve Bank, explain how the banking system creates money, explain what determines the demand for money, as well as supply of money, as well as equilibrium interest rates. Eventually, after getting through all of that, we'll talk about how the changes in money supply influence price level and therefore inflation. We're going to show the demand for money and the supply of money and equilibrium graphically. We're going to calculate changes in the monetary base using something called the money multiplier. And eventually talk about what happens in the long run through something called the quantity theory of money. But all we did yesterday was essentially talk about what money is and defined money in terms of what it does. Okay, so money is a thing that does these four functions. It's a medium of exchange, it's a unit of account, it's a store of value, and it's also the standard of deferred payment. So what two things do we consider to be money in the economy? In other words, two things that do all four of those functions. Well, there's two. There's currency, which is notes and coins. Essentially, currency is issued by the government. And then you have deposits, and deposits are essentially privately issued. So deposits originate from the banking system. Then the point was made that debit cards, credit cards, checks, and things like that are not actually money in themselves. They just transfer money within the system. And there are three primary measures of money. We can also talk about a fourth one. We can begin with M0, which is the money base. And money base is just currency. We then have M1. M1 is currency plus check deposits. So check deposits means basically the same as demand deposits. So those are deposits that you can go and withdraw immediately. You can go to the bank and just withdraw money. Then we talk about M2. So M2 consists of currency plus check deposits plus short and medium term deposits. Okay? So M2 includes these. And then we have M3, which is M2 plus longer term deposits. So as we go from M0 all the way up to M3, as these little numbers get bigger and bigger, so we go from most liquid to least liquid measures of money. So as a recap, we can begin by doing this question. Let me make it a bit bigger for you. Okay, number one. After you finish your degree, suppose your salary is $52,000 per year. This is an example of using the function of money known as the unit of account. Is that a unit of account? Who says yes, hands up? Who says no, hands up? Who has no idea, hands up? Okay. May I pick on you guys just quickly? What are you struggling with in that first one? What do you think? Do you understand what unit of account means? Not really. So that would be a problem, right? Okay. So what do we mean by the unit of account? Again, page 546. What is a unit of account? The unit of account is an agreed measure for stating the prices of goods and services. Okay? So it's the measure of prices. It's the thing that we use to measure prices. So if I tell you your salary is 52,000 Rand a year, what function of money am I using there? Is it a medium of exchange? Am I referring to money being a medium of exchange there? You think so? Am I referring to money being a store of value there? Am I referring to money being a unit of account there? Okay? So what do I mean by a medium of exchange? A medium of exchange means it's the thing that I give to people in order to get goods and services. Okay? Unit of account means this is the price of the thing. Okay? So if I go into Pick n Pay and I see there's 2 liters of milk, 2 liters of milk costs 25 Rand. I go to the counter, I give 25 Rand to the teller, and I walk out of the shop with 2 liters of milk. Right? When I give 25 Rand to the seller, what is my money doing there? Is it working as a store of value? Is it working as a unit of account? Is it working as a medium of exchange? Medium of exchange. You understand that? I'm using it to get something, right? When I stand in the aisle and I look at the price of, I look at the 2 liters of milk and I want to know, if I buy this, how much will it cost? And it tells me it will cost 25 Rand. Am I using money as a medium of exchange whilst looking at the price of that milk? It is the unit of account, absolutely. So if I tell you my salary is 52,000 Rand per year, what am I telling you? I'm telling you the price of my labor. So if I'm telling you the price of my labor, I'm telling you what about my labor that has to do with money. I'm using money as unit of account. Remember, unit of account is the price of something. The price of the milk was 25 Rand. That was the unit of account. The price of my labor is 52,000 Rand. That's a unit of account. If I get paid, right, I go somewhere and I actually get paid something, right? I exchange my labor, okay, and get paid for exchanging my labor in money, then that money would be functioning as medium of exchange, okay? So if I say that my salary is 52,000 per year, are you happy that that is a measure of the price of my labor? Okay? So if it's a measure of the price of my labor, is it functioning as a unit of account? Okay? Are you comfortable with that idea? You want to raise your hands if you are not happy with number 1? Will you raise your hands if you are happy with option number 1? And you guys are neither happy nor unhappy. Okay? Are you happy if I move to number 2? Okay. Option number 2. Oh, sorry. Are you happy, though, that it is a unit of account as used in that sentence, though? Okay. Option number 2. Suppose prices are quoted in dollars and transactions are conducted in rands. The dollar serves as a unit of account. Yes? Does the rand serve as a unit of account? Right, so what does the rand function as? The medium of exchange. Okay? So when the western half of the Roman Empire fell in the, put it this way, by about 1000 AD it was gone, right? And prices in medieval Europe were often quoted in denaries and sesterces, which were the Roman coins, even though no Roman coins circulated. So prices were quoted in terms of a pricing system, even though no coins of that type actually ever circulated. So medium of exchange and unit of account can be two different things. Did you find out about the difference between a renminbi and other stuff? No. Okay. Number 3, as a unit of account, money is used to state prices of all goods and services. Are we happy with that idea now? Number 4, keeping 200 Rand on hand for an emergency is an example of using money as a store of value. Yeah? Okay. Number 5, during periods of inflation, store of value is the function of money that is probably going to be most severely affected. During inflation, we still use money as the unit of account. We still use it as a medium of exchange, and it functions pretty well in both of those things. It doesn't function very well as a store of value, though, right? Because what it buys, the real value of stuff that my money will buy me today is often drastically more than what it will buy me in the near future if we have very high inflation. So as a store of value, it doesn't work very well. Okay, you happy with those options? Any questions? Questions? No? Okay. Got a second question for you. Let's do this. Let's go through it together. So, question, which of the following is correct in respect of money as medium of exchange? Number 1, facilitates the exchange of goods. Yeah? Number 2, reduces or eliminates the need for barter. You guys know what barter means? Sorry, someone said no? So barter means if I have a pen and you have a carrot, right? And I want your carrot, I give you my pen, you give me a carrot, right? So we don't use money. We actually exchange goods and services. That's called barter. I don't know who was asking. Okay, number 3, an object that sellers will accept as payment. Yeah. Option number 4, money is M1, M2, or currency. Would all of those be examples of money as the medium of exchange? No. Sorry? No? You had a question? Yeah, sure. Well, if we're referring to something like M2, M2 would include things like short and medium term deposits, okay? Which means we're taking our money and we're storing it, not because we want to use it as a medium of exchange. You get what I mean? As in, we're not going to use, if you've got a demand deposit account, you put your money there and you can use it immediately as a medium of exchange, right? Yeah, M2 is more money as a store of value. You're moving, remember, as we move from M0 down, we're moving more away from money as a medium of exchange, more towards a store of value, right? Remember that if we just have a demand deposit account, you earn often very little or no interest, which means as a store of value, it's not that great. Longer term deposits, higher interest rate, better as a store of value, but you can't use it to transact right now, so it's worse than doing that. Okay, number 5, money is the currency, deposits, and travelers' checks. Well, we already had the discussion about the idea that travelers' checks are not actually money, right? They're just something that transfers money. So, yeah, money, if we're talking about medium of exchange, first of all, travelers' checks not money, right? We're not going to consider travelers' checks as money. Currency and deposits, though, we would be saying those are the kind of money that would be used as a medium of exchange. Yes. Let me just make this smaller. So there was a question about these different types of money. I mean, not different types, different measures of money. And I mentioned that as we move from M0 to M3, the money that we are referring to is becoming less liquid. What do we mean by liquid? It means that we can use it as a medium of exchange. Okay? That's basically what we mean by liquid. Someone else will accept it immediately as payment. We can use it immediately as payment. Okay? That's what liquidity as a functional definition would be. Okay? So the most liquid types of money in these measures would be M0 and M1. M2 is not as liquid because you have to wait for some period of time before you can use that money to actually transact. Okay? Which means that it's money functioning more as a store of value than as a medium of exchange. Okay? Which is not to say that M0 and M1 don't function as a store of value. They just don't function as a very good store of value. Okay? M2 is a better store of value. Even though M2 might be a better store of value, it's a worse medium of exchange. And M3 is, again, an even better store of value, but an even worse medium of exchange. Because you have to wait even longer to use it in exchange. Okay? So all of these measures of money are units of account, mediums of exchange, and stores of value. Right? But in terms of their actual function at any particular point in time, M3 would not be able to function as a medium of exchange immediately. You'd have to wait for a long period of time before you could use it as a medium of exchange, right? And M0, I can use immediately as a medium of exchange, but as a store of value, it's going to be losing value very quickly, okay, at 7% per year in the South African economy currently, okay? Which as a rate of return is pretty hectic, negative 7%. That's not what you want to invest in. Okay? So all of these measures here are measures of money, but they emphasize, let's say, different aspects of money. Okay? So M3 emphasizes more the store of value function of money. M0 emphasizes more the medium of exchange value of function of money. So when we talk about money as a medium of exchange, right, we're talking not so much about M2 and M3 because that's more like, those are more measures of money as a store of value. Okay. Any other questions related to this? So we've spoken about what money is and how we measure it, and what it does, its functions. Now we're going to talk about something else within money markets, and those are the actual institutions which we interact with that either supply us with money or give us access to money or invest money on our behalf or any of those sorts of activities. So what are depository institutions? A depository institution is a firm that takes deposits, so depository takes deposits from households and firms and makes loans to other households or firms. Okay? And there are four primary types of depository institutions within the economy. There are commercial banks, there are mutual banks, there's something called the post bank, and we have land and agricultural banks. So commercial banks, these act as intermediaries between people with excess money and those with a need for money. Okay, so people with excess money we would consider savers, and those that have a need for money we would consider borrowers. Okay? So the normal story is that commercial banks are intermediaries between savers and borrowers. I prefer to think of commercial banks as intermediaries between buyers and savers, but that's another story. We then have something called a mutual bank, which is a lot like a commercial bank, but it has limited assets. In other words, the difference between a mutual bank and a commercial bank really has to do with ownership of the bank and basically legal entity definitions. So the kind of commercial banks that we have in South Africa would be ABSA as an example, Standard Bank, Capitec, right? Mutual banks. So I'm actually not sure if we have that many mutual banks, and I actually don't know which are mutual banks. Again, just because it's basically a technical definition about ownership and things. I know that Old Mutual, for example, has a bank. There is an Old Mutual bank. And Old Mutual as a company is a mutual company, or was a mutual company. I don't know if it's still a mutual company. In which case, Old Mutual Bank might well be a mutual bank. We have the Post Bank. Does anyone here have an account with the Post Bank? You put your hand up if you have an account with the Post Bank. Anyone? I think that gives you an idea about how successful the Post Bank is in South Africa. It's not something that people usually use. I think it was kind of targeted at, let's say, lower working class during the national government apartheid era. And I don't really know who it services these days. I think it's still, sorry? Pensioners and stuff. Could be. Yeah, you might find that a lot of pensioners today have accounts with Postbank because, like I said, in the dark past, right, during the apartheid era, there were a lot of lower working class, lower income people that had Postbank accounts that would now be pensioners. You know what I mean? I'm not sure who really uses the Postbank as new customers these days. I'm not 100% sure. There was talk during the SASA debacle about distributing social grants via the Postbank. Nothing came of that. And then, of course, we have land and agricultural banks, and these are banks that are specifically aimed at commercial loans for like farming practices. Okay. So if you live in a city and you work at, I don't know, whatever, Deloitte or something, some like city company, you're probably never going to encounter the land bank. But if you live in rural areas or you live in a farming community, then you probably know a lot about the land bank. There are also other kinds of banks that we have in South Africa. There are sort of like mutual banks that are sort of community banks which operate more in the rural areas of the country. I know that when Zuma needed to pay for part of his upgrades to Nkandla, he did it through one of those banks. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but I think it was also like a sort of a mutual land bank organization. And remember, we also have things like stokvels, which a lot of people are involved in, which are not really formal banks, but they provide a similar service. So what does a bank have to think about? How does a bank operate? What are the problems or the concerns when it comes to banking business? Well, the aim of a bank is to maximize its net worth or to maximize its profits for its shareholders. So what it does is it charges interest rates, and the interest rate at which a bank lends must exceed the interest rate that it pays out to its depositors, and the difference between those interest rates are what would constitute the revenue to the bank. So in maximizing its profits, it works off that margin. So in a sense, it's kind of like an arbitrage, right? So a bank must be prudent in the way that it uses its deposits, balancing security for the depositors against profits for its shareholders. So obviously it can charge higher interest rates and lend to people that are potentially poor credit, not good credit people. But if it does that, it also faces higher losses. And if it faces higher losses, it means that whoever has deposits at that bank potentially loses their deposits, right? So there is a balancing act that needs to be performed here. Of interest at this point in time, do you know that there is a big class action lawsuit against the banks for selling houses that were collateral for mortgage bonds? You guys know about this or not really? Okay, so class action lawsuit at this point in time has just been instigated for about, I don't know, the estimated value was something like 60 billion rand or something. Class action lawsuit where they're saying, the lawyers are saying, when the banks have foreclosed on mortgages, right? So in other words, someone is not paying the interest on the mortgage, right? Not making their mortgage payments. The bank can take the asset which is pledged as mortgage, which is the house, take the house, sell it on the market, take the proceeds from that and offset them against the amount that's outstanding on the loan. The problem, of course, is if the amount at which the house is sold for doesn't fully cover the amount of the loan, you as the person who took the loan out from the bank still needs to pay the difference, but you no longer have a house. Right? So the arguments that the lawyers have taken, and they want to take it straight to the Constitutional Court, so it's not going to go through all the different courts, is that the banks have essentially acted in a way that is against the Constitution, and those sales need to be reversed in instances where essentially those people that were paying, that were defaulting, could potentially have maybe made alternative arrangements. Okay? So the argument is the bank should not have just gone straight to foreclosure. They should have gone through a more, a process that was, more negotiation should have happened in the process, right? To basically prevent foreclosure and make that a final, like a last resort, as opposed to a first resort. Yes? That's fine. If they sell the house at a higher value, you as the person who did own the house, you would get the full proceeds of that house minus what you owe to the bank, right? So you would get whatever positive difference. Okay? So what do you think about that? What do you think about that idea? Should the banks be able to foreclose or not? No? Okay. We've got 5 minutes until 11. We could have a quick discussion about this if you're interested. Do you know some of the underlying factors, or let's say something that exacerbated the financial crisis of 2007, 2008 in the West? Do you know what that was about? Do you know what happened there? No, yeah. So I'll give you a brief story about what happened there and why it was a problem, okay? As I understand it, let's put it that way, right?